Hi, the subject for today's video is going to be how to configure modes of operation on Envy inverters. Please note that this video was made with homeowners and end users in mind, hence it will not cover the advanced menu items that are usually expected to be configured by the installers. The video and its contents are applicable to Envy 12 kW inverters as well as Envy 8K and 10K inverters. In this video, the inverter configuration is done using the Envy monitoring portal, yet the same configuration can be done using the LCD screen on the inverters. To access the Envy monitoring portal, navigate to envy.fortresspower.io using a browser of your choice and enter your credentials to sign into your account. Once logged into your account, you will see the general overview, performance overview of your system, solar yield, battery discharge, feed-in energy, i.e. export to the grid, consumption, i.e. how much your home is consuming from the energy storage system. You will see the animated graphic showing where the power is coming from and where the power is flowing to. In this case, power is coming from the PV and it's distributed by the inverter between the grid export and load consumption inside the home. You will also note that there are one or two items in the bottom right here. Those allow you to take live action on the system. Gen Quick Charge or Quick Start exercises the system, and Start Quick Charge charges the batteries for 1 hour. If you know that severe weather is coming, you can use this function. In the bottom, you also see the performance overview given in a chart. It shows the state of charge of the batteries. It shows the power flow, whether the battery was charging, discharging, whether the grid power was being imported or power was exported to the grid. You see the PV production, and you can visualize the performance of the system. You can see historically what the performance of the system was going back by each calendar day. This allows you to create a full understanding of where the power is flowing from your PV and how much really you are understanding of where the power is flowing from your PV and how much really you are reducing the import of the grid by and how much you're using your battery. If the location of the site is shared, you can also see the weather information in your area. We can also navigate to data section where we will see more detailed information about the system performance. Here, not only we can see more detailed data, but we can also check out the event history. For example, here we see that 3 times the inverter detected AC voltage drifting out of range. In this video though, we'll mostly focus on maintenance section. It is here where the inverter configuration is changed. First of all, I strongly suggest changing to old setting page since it is more user-friendly and more detailed, also very well time tested. And from here, we can adjust the modes of operations, and not only that, but also change the inverter settings. Before actually starting conversation about changing the settings and which settings need to be changed, let's recap what those modes of operation are. Let's start with backup mode of operation. In this mode of operation, the energy storage system conserves almost all of the battery capacity for use during a grid outage. Some battery capacity is recommended to be used. Batteries need to be cycled, even if they're cycled for a very small depth of discharge. PV is used for charging the batteries, and PV is used for powering the loads. One may also have PV configured to be exported to the grid, but this obviously is optional. Arguably the most common mode of operation is self-consumption. Here, PV production is used to power the loads and charge the batteries. System retains the backup capabilities, and the reserve capacity for battery backup can be set. With our inverter, self-consumption can also be configured such that the export is also possible. In this case, the priority for the PV power is as follows. First the loads, then the batteries, and then the export. So if your PV is producing more than your home is consuming and the batteries are fully charged, the excess PV production will find its way to the grid. The last but not least is time of use. In this mode of operation, the batteries are charged and discharged in pre-selected time ranges to accommodate for changing electricity rates throughout the day. Outside of the selected time ranges, the system is in self-consumption mode. In the backup mode, we are trying to conserve almost all of the battery capacity for use during a grid outage. Just a reminder, we will not be configuring every single setting here because it is assumed that most of it is configured by the installer, and we are just focusing on the settings and the parameters that have to do with the mode of operation. We only need to enable backup from the inverter. For that, we enable power backup. In the same menu, we decide whether or not we want to enable PV export or not. If we want no PV export to grid, we enable fast zero export. If we want to allow the inverter to export power to the grid, then we enable grid sellback and immediately configure the sellback power setting. Input the number up to the inverter rating, and once you input the number, you click set to be clicked everywhere where it is found and where you change the setting. Without clicking set, the inverter will not acknowledge the entry. For example, if we were to enter some kind of a number here, we see there's a set. If we don't click set, the inverter will not acknowledge the entry. Please keep that in mind. Let's return to the topic of backup mode of operation, assuming that you have made selection for PV export, whether or not you want to enable it. Next, we configure system charge SOC limit. Right here, we see that it is to be configured to 100% so that the system is allowed to charge the battery bank to full 100% state of charge. We also configure seamless EPS switching. We enable it. EPS stands for emergency power supply, and by enabling this setting, what will happen is that during a grid outage, home will switch to backup power, i.e. PV and or battery power, seamlessly without even the lights flickering. So far we have configured the application settings. Now we are in the section called charge setting. We select battery charge control to be state of charge, so the inverter will make decisions based on the state of charge of the battery bank, not the voltage. This is to be selected every time there is battery to inverter communication established, which there should be one, because we strongly suggest having it in place. Next, we enable AC charge. This allows the grid to charge the batteries, or the inverter to take the grid power to charge batteries. Now that AC charge is enabled, we also need to select based on what it will take the decision on charging the battery. Charging based on time, that is for time of use. We will see that later. It can start charging and charging based on state of charge, which we will select in this case, but you can have the combination of the two. That will become more relevant in time of use mode of operation. Now that we have made all the proper selections, we need to configure the percentages. Namely two of them, start AC charge percentage and stop AC charge percentage, which means we here enter at what battery percentage the grid is to start charging the batteries and what battery percentage the grid is to stop charging the batteries. For start, we have entered 90%. For stop, we have entered 100%. We also have to enter AC charge power. Usually this is entered to be the inverter rating. So for example, for NV 12K inverter, you would enter 12 here. Next, we need to configure, still on the maintenance page, discharge settings. For discharge control as well, we select state of charge. We need to be consistent. If we selected state of charge for charging, we need to select state of charge for discharging. After making the correct selection, we need to configure on-grid cutoff state of charge and off-grid cutoff state of charge. For on-grid cutoff, we select 89% because if it so happens that the battery reached 90% and the AC or the grid did not start charging it, then at 89%, 1% later, the battery will stop outputting any power and it will not cycle below 89%. Meanwhile, in the off-grid mode of operation, when the grid is unavailable and the home is only dependent on the PV and the batteries, the off-grid cutoff is set to be 20%. That is because Fortress Power does not recommend discharging batteries below 20% state of charge. In case there is a generator connected to the system, if we want to allow the generator to charge the batteries, which usually is the case, we do want the generator to charge the batteries, select Enable in the generator charge section. And we also configure at what percentage the generator starts charging the batteries and at what percentage the generator stops charging the batteries. We want the generator to turn on before the battery cuts out. So because we had off-grid cutoff set at 20%, we will set the charge start for the generator at 21%, which means that if the generator starts on time, as it's supposed to, the battery will not reach the cutout percentage, and once the generator is running, it will keep running until the battery state of charge reaches 100%. This number can also be reduced. You don't have to enter 100% here. It can be anything as low as 25 or 30% all the way up to 100. Let's talk about self-consumption and self-consumption plus, as I like to call it. Plus obviously means that you have PV export enabled. Just like before, we start with application setting on the maintenance page. We enable power backup because there is no reason not to enable it really in most cases. Depending on whether or not we want the PV export, we make a selection. If we want no PV export, just like before, we select fast zero export. But if we do want PV export to the grid enabled, then we select enable on the grid sellback, and we select grid sellback power. We can set it to number all the way up to the inverter rating. So for example, if you're using NV10K, this number can be anything up to 10 kilowatts. Next, we want to configure system charge SOC limit. And just like before, that limit is going to be 100%. We allow the system to charge the battery bank to full. Since we have power backup enabled, we also enable seamless switch for best customer experience. With that, we are ready to jump to the charge setting page, or section rather. And here, just like before, we select battery charge control to be based on state of charge rather than voltage. Also enable AC charge. We select AC charge based on state of charge. And then we select start AC charge percentage and stop AC charge percentage. As you see, because this is a self-consumption application, we want to use the grid for a very short period of time only when needed. So if the battery reaches 21%, only then the grid will start charging the battery, and it's going to continue doing so up until the point when the battery bank reaches 30%. We want to maximize PV charging and reduce grid charging. You could have this number even lower. AC charge power again can be as much as the inverter maximum. Because we're not trying to reserve power only for backup, but we also want to use that power when the grid is available, select lower percentage for on-grid cutoff. 20% for on-grid cutoff and 20% for off-grid cutoff. What that means is that when the grid is available, the PV will take care of the loads as much as it can. If there's any excess remaining, that will go to the battery. Once the battery is fully charged, then the PV will handle as much loads as it can and sell the excess to the grid if the grid export is enabled. But after the PV production has returned to zero or has reduced that it cannot accommodate for all the loads, the battery will be supplementing the PV so that the import from the grid is reduced, thus in attempt to reduce the electricity bill by the end of the month for the site where the system is installed. That's the whole idea behind self-consumption. If the generator is present, we allow the generator to charge the batteries, and we select the charge start state of charge at 21% and charge and state of charge at 100%, just like before, to configure the time of use as needed. In time of use, again, the batteries are charged or discharged in pre-selected time ranges at the pre-selected power, as we will see in a moment. Outside of these time ranges, the system is in self-consumption mode and operates as I have described. So we start with the settings just like before. We enable backup power. We decide whether or not we want to have PV export to grid, and if we do, how much power we're willing to send to the grid at a maximum. We select the system charge SOC limit to 100%, again allowing the system to charge the batteries to full. Then we select seamless switching for the improved customer experience so that you don't need to reset the clock range or your microwave and the lights don't even flicker. Then we go to the charge setting, and here is the first time when we do something differently really. For we select state of charge as the battery charge control. We select AC charge enable, enabling the inverter to take power from the grid to charge the batteries. On the AC charge based on, we select time plus SOC/volt. In our case, it's SOC because we selected SOC. By selecting this, we are telling the inverter, hey, you have two things to go off of: time range and the SOC. Because remember, I said that outside of the specified time ranges, the system is in self-consumption. If it is in self-consumption outside of these time ranges, it needs the same settings to be configured as we configured for self-consumption. We select start AC charge SOC and set it to 21%. Stop AC charge SOC to 100%. This is for self-consumption portion of it. After we select AC charge power, which we equal or less than the inverter rating, then we select charge first start time. We set the time at which this charge or forced charge interval begins. So it's 2:30 p.m. 14:30 in military time, it's 2:30 p.m. when the battery is forced to start charging, and with the next entry 1700, that is 5 p.m. That's when this forced charge stops and the system returns to self-consumption mode. We can do the same thing for discharge, right? We select the SOC again because we have selected SOC based control for charging. We do the same for discharge. We select on-grid cutoff SOC and off-grid cutoff SOC, again, just like we did with self-consumption, 20% for each of those. Then we select the time range in which the battery is forced to discharge. Our start time is 17:30, that is 5:30 p.m. and first discharge end time is 2000, which is 8 p.m. in military time. In this interval, the battery will be outputting the power that you have specified here in the forced discharge power. This is useful because if you have variable rates, let's say your utility company charges you more during peak times, you force charge the battery, so you import electricity, cheaper electricity, to charge your battery. When the rates are higher, you can force discharge to the grid or use the batteries in self-consumption. And if in a certain period of time the electricity rate for export is higher, you can use the forced discharge to sell your PV electricity, the one that you have produced, for a higher price. You can also optionally select PV cell to grid according to NEM 3 specifications, and you just click enable and that takes care of it. With the generator, it's the same story as before. Generator boost enable, and you select the charge start state of charge, which is 21% in this case, and charge end state of charge 100%. Again, 1% higher for start, so that your battery doesn't reach the cutoff percentage, because then it would stop outputting any power. Here, right immediately before it's about to stop outputting power, the generator kicks in, charges the batteries, and provides the power for the load. So hopefully you find this video helpful. Thank you for watching, and make sure to check out our other videos about interesting topics around our batteries and our inverters. See you next time.